protecting Main Street from Wall Street. It's time for Money Unleashed with Eric Johnson and Kyle Allyn.
You have to have a plan where you know if the market's going to go up, what happens next. And you also have to have a plan where if it doesn't go the way you think, you know what you're going to do.
It's time to put you back in control of your money.
I'm not trying to predict the weather, which is kind of what we're talking about, right? It's predicting the stock market. I'm trying to build a better boat.
This is Money Unleashed with Eric Johnson and Kyle Allyn.
Welcome to the Money Unleashed podcast. I'm Eric Johnson, joined as always by Kyle Allyn. We are the vice presidents of Hoffman Financial Group. We bring you new episodes every Monday and Friday, so be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Let's jump into the show. We're going to talk about the magic number in retirement. Now, for everybody out there, this is a number that most Americans feel that they need to have in order to have a successful retirement. And recently, Kyle, that number dropped, didn't it?
That's right. So one of the things we pulled out, this was a study done by Northwestern Mutual. Overall, Americans expect they will need $1.26 million to retire comfortably, according to the study. The old number was $1.46, so we've seen a $200,000 drop from the original number. So with the market changes, with things going on, the public is coming back and saying, we think we need less to retire. So I thought that was interesting, right? Normally we see that number kind of growing.
Right. You would think that that number would go up based upon what everyone's worried about with, rising prices and the, possibility of needing to work longer.
I talk about this often. So we worked for many years with the baby boomer generation. Now we're moving into Generation X. And for many, many, many years, when I talked to people about what they would spend in retirement, there was an energy of conservatism in their voice. And they would sort of say, hey, I'm very frugal. Mm-hmm. They'd want to brag to me about their car that they had with 300,000 miles. So somebody with a couple $1 million and they're bragging about this car that they've driven for many, many years. And so I think one of the things that happens to retirees is they're trying to live off a budget that they establish, right? So when you're working, try to make as much money as possible, but when you're retired, you get to choose, right? So maybe that's why the whole magic number exists, because you're thinking, okay, if I get to make the choice, what's the perfect choice? I think one of the things to remember is retirement is incredibly custom. Like, I'm from a very small town originally, and now I live in Atlanta. So there's millions of people in the town I live in today, and there's very few people in the town that I grew up in. Well, if you retire in a smaller place, well, your income levels, your need is going to be different than if, of course, you say retire in L.A.
Right.
So you're matching these custom designs. I don't think there is a magic number. When I see 1.26, I understand the construct. I remember many years ago when I first started this business, it seemed like it was around 800,000. And then I remember when the number got over 1 million. And then recently I thought it was 1.4. I guess it's come back down a little bit. But my point is, I've watched that number kind of grow over time, but I don't think it's all that important, because if someone is living in a position where they need $50,000 a year in retirement and they're getting half of that need from Social Security, well, then I would say they don't really need $1 million. If someone is saying, I need $200,000 in income and they're getting a quarter of that from Social Security, okay, well, then we clearly do need over $1 million. So it's matching what you need to what you have.
I would say that while I find the number dropping interesting, it doesn't give the whole picture, in my opinion, because everybody's a little bit different. Everyone's got different spending habits. Sometimes I run into people, they've got a very large spending habit, but they don't have a whole lot of money. Those people are kind of up against it. And then I've got some people, they've got a very nice sized portfolio that most people be proud of, and their spending habits are rather reasonable. So I think it all really predicates off of spending habits and what we have coming in for income streams. Chris talks about being an income wizard.
And maybe you're hitting on the exact answer right there, which is the spending habits of Americans have changed, right? We talked about that in the last show where we said, that even the wealthy have stopped purchasing the big homes. So maybe this is just a reflection of the spending habits right now, right? People are nervous. And that actually brings up something I wanted to point out with you, because I've gotten asked this a couple times. I've been doing these workshops where I go out and I sit down with the public and we talk about what's going on.
Yeah.
And I let them ask me questions. And one of the questions I've been getting a lot is, do you change your income based on what's going on in the market? So it's almost like a lot of retirees that are working without a retirement advisor or a fiduciary have this belief system that we should adjust our income down when things are bad.
Okay, so when I hear that, I hear somebody who's using the traditional Wall Street model of stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, and they're pulling shares based upon what's happening in the market. Now, in my opinion, if you have a properly set up income plan, Kyle, you don't need to change your income based upon what's happening, on a day-to-day basis in the market.
So take me there. Walk me through that, right? If I'm listening, I'm riding in my car right now, and I hear that the solution to not having to lower my paycheck in retirement is having a plan. How do they get that plan?
Well, let's start off with the person who's asking that type of question. What are they doing? And then what would you do differently in order to achieve what I was talking about? All right, so the person asked that question, it's evident to me that they're just pulling shares, right? So you can get away with that when the market's going up and just pull more shares. It's basically like free money. The market's making you more money. You're taking it as you go, which is fine. And you can get away with that in a bull market. Now, the problem with that strategy, if you will, is if you do have a 2022 or you're pulling, let's say in the last couple of months when the market shot down 14%, then the problem with that is that you're actually pulling more and more shares to accumulate what you need on a month-to-month basis. And the market always goes up. It always has, right? Now, how it's gone up has changed recently over the past 4 or 5 years. But if you are in a down period and you're pulling more and more shares out to satisfy what you need on a monthly basis to supplement Social Securities and potential pensions, then you might not have enough shares to recover and see that number that you like when the market comes back because you're pulling more and more shares out. So there is a possibility of a tremendous drawdown with that strategy. So that's number one. So I just want to point that out for everybody. Now, when we set up income streams for people, I kind of like my cake and eat it too. I like to create dividends or yield through investment vehicles that retain your principal, do not draw it down, that you can have consistent monthly income coming in to supplement those pensions and Social Securities that you have to live your lifestyle.
Now, let me stop you for a second.
Sure.
You said the word dividend. Can I just take my portfolio, buy a bunch of dividend stocks, and move on?
Theoretically, you could. However, it all depends on how much you need, right? So I would argue that most people in a traditional dividend portfolio, if they're good, solid dividend yield stocks, what does that mean? You're traditionally getting anywhere from 3 to 4% max from those types of portfolios. Now, 4%, okay, right? I would argue most Americans need more like closer to 6 or 7 in order to achieve the income that they need. But you are responsible for all the ups and the downs of those dividend stocks. And incidentally, like let's say those dividend stocks go down 20%. Well, it's going to take you 5 years just on dividends, accruing, not using, just to make your money back. So that might not be the best place for most people if they want to create income using just dividend stocks. Now, I know back in the day, that was how you did it, right?
I want to explain why I brought that up. Someone came in the other day, a nice gentleman, he and his wife, and they were in their 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And he had been convinced by a financial advisor to take the last portion. So you and I talk about sometimes this idea that you've got your income money and then over here you've got your growth money. So they'd solve for income. They had a lot of protection. That was all that need was met.
Okay.
And they had taken that last third of their money and said, well, since you're old, we should buy dividend stocks. And when we looked at it, we realized that their portfolio, even in black and white, right there in the portfolio numbers and the plan that was proposed by the original advisor said, hey, you're only going to make 5% for the rest of your life. And by small adjustments, we were able to take them to a place where they're going to average more like 8 to 9.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different alternative vehicles that are out there. Some of them are provided by banks, some of them are provided by insurance companies, some of them are provided by brokerage houses. And they can get you much more robust income and avoidance of the market risk, or hedging, if you will, to the markets. And when you're getting those higher rates of return for yield, it doesn't take as much money as you think in order to create the income you need to supplement your other income streams to live in retirement, which then means that you're allowed to have money off to the side growing in retirement too. So that's how I like to do it. I like to actually have my cake and eat it too. And you can have it that way, Kyle, if you do this properly. It's, segmenting a portion of your portfolio so you can actually create that income that doesn't draw it down. And then also having portions off to the side that you can grow. Like, for instance, when I create a retirement plan for people, I like monthly income we can count on. I like money we can pull from any time we want. And I like money every year that we can give you. And I have 3 different ways to pay you inside of your portfolio using different investment vehicles that give you protection, income, and growth. And
it sounds like to me you're really introducing to your clients a distribution strategy.
100%.
I wonder how many advisors have sat down with their clients and said, okay, we've accumulated all these great assets. We're now in distribution. This is the way that I'm going to send you a check. I wonder how many people listening to our voice are thinking, I'm not exactly sure how I get my money.
Well, that's precisely right, because if you're just in a growth portfolio, that's not a retirement portfolio. It's a completely different world when you're in retirement. Most people, and this is just being a human being and fearing the unknown, because they know that when you stop working, the paycheck stops. It's consistent income, right? Well, if you're pulling from a portfolio that's got shares, your initial assumption is that I just have to pull this until I die.
Yeah.
And growth, while you're working, is a priority, number one. You want to accumulate compound, and grow. Well, when you retire, your perspective should be changing a little bit, okay? It's how do I create income, number one. Now, it's not like growth is like, in the back corner, put baby in the corner. That's usually a secondary or a tertiary want and need in retirement, but you still can have it, right? Like, so for instance, your client who was in the 80s saying you have to have dividend stock portfolios. Well, if they properly put together an income plan that they could use and not draw their accounts down, they could afford to have Amazon.
Well, I want to give you something now. When I looked at the plan, and to the gentleman's credit, he said, no, we're not losing our money. At the end of our life, we've got $1.3 million in what was called and described in the plan as protected assets.
Okay.
So then when I double-checked the math, what I found was the financial advisor that built the plan had put into the plan his real estate. So he had about $1.3 million in real estate. So what the client didn't realize was the $2 million he had was disappearing.
Yes.
The $1.3 million in real estate was appreciating to about 1.8. So what looked like to him, his 1.8 sticking around and him not draining the principal, he actually was draining all of his money, and the advisor was trying to take credit for the real estate appreciating. So I want to be clear. If you're running these numbers, if you're running plans with people, be very, very careful. I would argue you need a second opinion, because in his case, he literally thought that the plan was saying that his 1.8 that he currently had was going to still be there at the end of life. But if you understood how to look at the plan, if you understood how to check the math and look at the numbers, it clearly stated he was holding in his hand something that said he was going to drain his money, and the only thing he would be giving away in legacy was his real estate. The exciting news for him was we showed him how to not only give away the real estate, but also never touch the principal on the money he currently had and give that an inheritance as well.
Well, I think that's what everybody wants in retirement. They want to be able to use the funds they've accumulated for themselves, but also leave it to the family members or charities of their choice when they pass away. Now, you can't have your cake and eat it too. It doesn't have to be a draw your portfolio down to oblivion type situation. However, I agree with you, Kyle. If you do have a plan that looks like this, you do need to double check this, because there are other ways to solve this problem and take that drawdown situation out of it for everybody involved. And, I've got great news for everybody. We put these types of plans together every single day. They're designed around retirement. They're designed around you continuing to keep your legacy, but they're also designed for the success of your retirement using the income you need on a monthly basis. Give us a call. Let's get one of these plans started for you today, or let's get your current plan double-checked to make sure it's not drawing down. 404-640-5511. That's 404-640-5511, or you can find us on unleashyourmoney.com.
So here's the good news about everything we're talking about. You don't even have to fight the traffic. I mean, we've got offices all over the city. So whether you're in Conyers, or you're in Fayetteville, or you're in Kennesaw, or you're in the city and you're there with me in Sandy Springs, or you're out here in Alpharetta, or in Duluth, we have put offices all over the city to make this convenient for you. So at no cost in your area, you can take a little trip, sit down with an advisor for the day. They will build you a plan, and they don't charge you for that plan. So if you would like to have a fiduciary for the day, give us a call.
404-640-5511. That's 404-640-5511, or you can find us on unleashyourmoney.com.
Eric Johnson and Kyle Allyn are investment advisor representatives of Brookstone Wealth Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor and affiliate of Brookstone Capital Management, LLC. BWA and Hoffman Financial Group are affiliated under common ownership. Registered investment advisors and investment advisor representatives act as fiduciaries for all of our investment management clients. We have an obligation to act in the best interest of our clients and to make full disclosures of any conflicts of interest. Please refer to our firm brochure, the ADV 2A, page 4, for additional information. The Hoffman Financial Group and WSB are not affiliated. Exposure to ideas and financial vehicles discussed should not be considered investment advice or recommendation to buy or sell any financial vehicle. This information should not be considered tax or legal advice. Individuals should consult with a professional specializing in the field of tax, legal, accounting, or investments regarding the applicability of this information for their situation. Any client experiences discussed during the show are unique to that client. They are not meant to imply or suggest you will experience the same results. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Investments will fluctuate, and when redeemed may be worth more or less than when originally invested. Any comments regarding safe and secure products and guaranteed income streams refer only to fixed insurance products. They do not refer in any way to securities or investment advisory products. Fixed insurance and annuity product guarantees are subject to the claims paying ability of the issuing company and are not offered by Brookstone. Index or fixed annuities are not designed for short-term investments and may be subject to caps, restrictions, fees, and surrender charges as described in the annuity contract. Please refer to our firm brochure, the ADV 2A, Item 4, for additional information. Hoffman Financial Group is not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency. Insurance licensed in Georgia, number 163546.